Ever wondered what could kill you in the Middle Ages? Curious about how ordinary people met their end through seemingly innocent daily activities? Death lurked around every corner in medieval times, and the most mundane habits could lead to a quick demise. Number 10. The deadly drink. Did you know water could kill you in medieval times? Not the water itself, but what lurked within it. Medieval people rarely drank plain water, and for good reason. Their water sources were often contaminated with human waste, animal carcasses, and industrial runoff from tanneries and butcheries. Instead, most medieval folks turned to alcohol as their primary hydration source. Beer and ale, with their lower alcohol content than modern versions, were consumed by everyone, including children. The brewing process killed harmful bacteria, making these beverages safer than water from wells or rivers. However, even this safety measure had its deadly pitfalls. Alcohol consumption was enormous by modern standards. An average medieval person might consume a gallon of ale daily, leading to liver disease, malnutrition, and accidents while inebriated. Falling into ditches, off bridges, or downstairs while intoxicated was a common cause of death. Some also drank wine that had been sweetened with lead acetate, known as lead sugar. This additive gave cheap wine a sweet taste but slowly poisoned drinkers, causing everything from gout to madness before eventually killing them. Many rich Romans had died from this same habit centuries earlier, but medieval people never made the connection. The truly wealthy sometimes drank from lead or pewter cups, which leached toxic metals into their beverages over time. Ironically, the poor, drinking from wooden cups and consuming less wine, avoided this particular method of poisoning. Number 9. Bread, the staff of death. What could be more innocent than bread? Yet this staple food regularly killed medieval people. The grain used for bread frequently contained ergot, a fungus that causes hallucinations, convulsions, gangrene, and death. Entire villages could be affected by ergot poisoning, sometimes creating mass hysteria that historians believe may have contributed to witch trial panics. Medieval bakers faced their own occupational hazards. They worked around blazing hot ovens in wooden structures, leading to frequent and devastating fires. Many bakers died in these infernos, and sometimes entire sections of towns burned down from a bakery fire. The flour itself presented dangers too. Continuously inhaling flour dust led to baker's lung, a condition that slowly suffocated bakers as their lungs filled with fine particles. Those who milled the grain faced even greater risks, as millstones occasionally broke apart at high speeds, sending deadly stone fragments flying. Even the process of growing grain was hazardous. Farmers often stored grain in underground pits to hide it from thieves or tax collectors. When retrieving their grain, they sometimes descended into these pits where oxygen had been depleted by the decomposing grain, leading to swift and silent suffocation. For the poorest medieval folk, bread might contain not just grain but fillers like ground acorns, sawdust, or even chalk during times of famine. These additions provided no nutrition and sometimes actively harmed those who consumed them, leading to slow starvation even while feeling temporarily full. Number 8. Deadly fashion. Could your clothes kill you? In medieval times, absolutely. The wealthy wore garments dyed with vibrant colors produced through highly toxic processes. Green dyes often contained arsenic, which absorbed through the skin, causing slow poisoning. Red dyes sometimes came from mercury compounds, leading to madness, tremors, and death. For nobility, fur-lined garments brought prestige, but also fleas and the diseases they carried. Plague-carrying fleas lived comfortably in the warm furs worn by the wealthy, giving the Black Death an express route to their bloodstreams. Women's fashion proved particularly lethal. Tight lacing of corsets restricted breathing and compressed internal organs, causing fainting, digestive problems, and eventually permanent damage to the ribs and spine. The heaviness of elaborate dresses, sometimes weighing up to 50 pounds with all their layers, led to spinal deformities and mobility issues that prevented exercise and proper health. Men weren't safe from fashion hazards either. Pointed shoes called poulaines became so extreme that the tips had to be stuffed with moss and supported with whalebone. These shoes made natural walking impossible and led to painful deformities, foot infections, and falls that could be fatal, especially on medieval stairs or when crossing slippery streets. Perhaps most bizarre were the deaths caused by ruffs, those elaborate neck collars popular in the late medieval and Renaissance periods. The starch used to keep them rigid was highly flammable, and catching fire from a candle meant wearers essentially had a fire ring around their necks, often leading to horrific burns and death. Number 7. Home sweet deadly home. Was your home a safe haven in medieval times? Hardly. Medieval houses were death traps by modern standards. Constructed primarily of wood, wattle, and daub, homes frequently caught fire from unattended cooking flames, candles, or sparks from hearths. With no fire departments, a small flame could rapidly turn into a fatal inferno. Smoke presented another silent killer. Medieval homes had poor ventilation, typically just a hole in the roof above the central hearth. The constant smoke inhalation led to respiratory diseases, eye problems, and carbon monoxide poisoning. Many people simply went asleep near their fires on cold nights and never woke up. Structural collapses were common too. Without modern building codes or engineering knowledge, houses sometimes simply gave way, crushing occupants. This became particularly dangerous during heavy snowfalls or after flooding weakened foundations. Inside these homes, vermin ran rampant. Rats, mice, fleas, and lice lived alongside humans, spreading diseases including plague, typhus, and various fevers. The straw commonly used for bedding provided perfect nesting materials for these unwanted roommates, bringing disease carriers into intimate contact with sleepers. The roofs themselves harbored dangers. Thatched roofs made from dried vegetation provided excellent homes for spiders, snakes, and rodents. These creatures would occasionally fall onto sleeping residents below, resulting in bites, stings, or simply heart attacks from the shock of a snake landing on one's face in the middle of the night. Number 6. Childbirth and infant care. How dangerous was bringing new life into the medieval world? Terrifyingly so. Childbirth was one of the leading causes of death for women. Without modern medical understanding, sterilization, or surgical options for complicated deliveries, women frequently died from hemorrhage, infection, eclampsia, or obstructed labor. The practices around childbirth often increased these dangers. Birthing rooms were kept hot and sealed from fresh air, believed to protect the mother from bad humors. This created perfect conditions for bacteria to thrive. Midwives, though often skilled, had no way to combat serious complications and sometimes used techniques that increased infection risks. Once born, infants faced their own gauntlet of deadly practices. Swaddling involved wrapping babies tightly in cloth strips, sometimes for days without changing them. This led to skin infections, restricted breathing, and deformities. Some babies simply suffocated in their swaddling clothes when they shifted position. Wet nursing, common among wealthy families, brought additional risks. Disease could be transmitted through breast milk, and some wet nurses, responsible for multiple infants, spread illnesses between unrelated babies. Additionally, some unscrupulous wet nurses used various methods to quiet crying infants, including giving them alcohol or opium preparations that occasionally proved fatal. The practice of overlaying claimed countless infant lives. Parents would sleep with infants in their beds for warmth and convenience, sometimes rolling onto and smothering their children during sleep. This was so common that church courts regularly dealt with cases of accidental infant death by overlaying, typically not punishing parents severely as it was recognized as a tragic accident rather than intentional harm. Number 5. Medical treatments. Would you believe doctors were sometimes more dangerous than diseases? Medieval medicine operated on fundamentally flawed principles that often hastened death rather than preventing it. The four humors theory, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, led to treatments focused on balancing these substances regardless of the actual condition. Bloodletting exemplified this approach. Physicians would cut veins or use leeches to remove excess blood from already weakened patients. King Charles II of England reportedly had 24 ounces of blood removed during one illness, about a quarter of his total blood volume. Far from curing him, this treatment likely contributed to his eventual death. Mercury and arsenic featured prominently in medieval pharmacology. Mercury was used to treat everything from skin conditions to syphilis, slowly poisoning patients. Arsenic treated fevers, headaches, and even served as a supposed aphrodisiac, killing people gradually through accumulated toxicity. Trepanation, drilling holes in the skull to release pressure or evil spirits, was performed without anesthesia or antiseptics. Though some remarkably survived this procedure, many died from infection, brain damage, or shock. Archaeological evidence shows some skulls with multiple trepanation holes, indicating survivors of previous operations. Perhaps most disturbing was the use of excrement in medicines. Human and animal waste appeared in numerous cures, introducing dangerous bacteria directly into open wounds or into patients' digestive systems. One popular treatment for wounds involved applying warm animal dung as a poultice, virtually guaranteeing infection. Number 4. Bathing and hygiene hazards. Could keeping clean kill you in medieval times? Surprisingly, sometimes it did. Although the notion that medieval people never bathed is exaggerated, their bathing practices came with unique dangers. Public bathhouses were popular in towns and cities, but they spread disease efficiently. Sharing bath water with dozens or hundreds of others meant skin conditions, eye infections, and parasites passed easily between bathers. These establishments often doubled as brothels, adding sexually transmitted diseases to the mix. Even private bathing held dangers. Heating water for a bath required maintaining a fire, often in wooden structures, leading to house fires. Additionally, large metal tubs of hot water posed drowning risks, especially when bathers consumed alcohol before or during their baths, as was common. The concept of catching cold from bathing wasn't entirely superstition. In poorly heated medieval homes, wet hair and bodies could indeed lead to hypothermia, particularly during winter months. This legitimate danger reinforced beliefs that bathing itself was hazardous, especially during illness when the body was already weakened. Personal grooming tools posed their own threats. Shared combs spread lice and skin conditions. Razors used for shaving could cause infections when they cut the skin. Without antibiotics, even small cuts during grooming sometimes led to fatal blood poisoning. Ironically, some hygiene products themselves contained deadly ingredients. Skin whiteners made with leads slowly poisoned those seeking beauty. Mercury compounds used to treat lice and skin conditions caused neurological damage over time. Even seemingly innocent cosmetics often contained arsenic, lead, or mercury to achieve desired effects. Number 3. Occupational hazards. What jobs were death sentences in medieval times? Nearly all of them came with serious risks. Blacksmiths constantly inhaled coal smoke and metal particles, leading to lung diseases. They also suffered burns, eye injuries from flying sparks, and hearing loss from the constant hammering. Many developed distinctive deformities in their arms from repetitive motions and heavy lifting. Tanners who converted animal hides into leather worked with highly toxic chemicals including urine, feces, lime, and various caustic substances. These chemicals caused skin conditions, respiratory problems, and poisoning. The smell was so noxious that tanneries were typically located downwind of towns, isolating these workers and their deadly craft. Miners faced perhaps the highest occupational mortality rate. Cave-ins, floods, and toxic gas pockets killed instantly. Those who survived these immediate dangers often developed silicosis from inhaling rock dust or suffered from heavy metal poisoning from exposure to lead, mercury, or arsenic in the mines. For women, textile work came with its own deadly attributes. Spinners and weavers inhaled wool and flax dust constantly, developing respiratory conditions known as wool sorter's disease or weaver's cough. The hunch positions required for spinning and weaving led to spinal deformities and arthritis. Dyers worked with caustic chemicals and heavy metals that poisoned them gradually. Even seemingly safer occupations like scribes had their dangers. Lead, mercury, and arsenic in inks and pigments were absorbed through the skin or ingested when scribes licked brushes to create fine points. The hunched position and poor lighting led to severe eye strain and spinal problems. Some manuscripts contain high enough levels of arsenic that modern researchers must handle them with gloves. Number 2. Food preservation and preparation. How could storing food be deadly? In countless ways. Without refrigeration, medieval people relied on methods like salting, smoking, drying, fermenting, and pickling to preserve foods. While often effective, these techniques sometimes failed catastrophically. Meat preservation posed particular dangers. Improperly salted meat putrefied from the inside out, sometimes appearing normal on the outside while harboring deadly bacteria within. Botulism from improperly preserved meats and vegetables caused paralysis and death. The high salt content of properly preserved foods led to chronic hypertension and related conditions. Smoking foods created carcinogenic compounds that slowly damaged the bodies of those who regularly consumed them. The wood smoke itself caused respiratory issues for those doing the smoking, especially when performed in enclosed spaces during winter. Food storage containers added their own hazards. Ceramic vessels glazed with lead-leach toxins into acidic foods like wine, vinegar, or fruit preserves. Copper cooking vessels created verdigris, copper acetate, when in contact with acidic foods, causing violent digestive upset and potential liver damage. Even successful preservation often reduced nutritional value, leading to deficiency diseases. The winter months frequently brought scurvy from lack of vitamin C, beriberi from thiamine deficiency, and various other conditions resulting from limited dietary variety. These deficiencies weakened people, making them more susceptible to infectious diseases that might otherwise have been survived. The cooking itself presented immediate dangers. Open hearth cooking led to burns, clothing fires, and carbon monoxide poisoning. Large hanging pots sometimes fell, scalding or crushing those below. Exploding cooking vessels caused injuries similar to shrapnel wounds when pottery containers shattered from internal steam pressure. Number 1. Religious and social practices. Could your faith kill you in medieval times? Absolutely. Religious practices, while intended to save souls, frequently endangered bodies. Pilgrimages exposed travelers to risks including bandits, disease from crowded pilgrim hostels, and the simple dangers of medieval travel like drowning at river crossings or falling from mountain paths. Religious fasting, particularly during Lent and Advent, sometimes pushed already marginally nourished people into dangerous nutritional deficiencies. The heaviest fasting requirements often coincided with the end of winter when food stores were lowest and bodies most vulnerable. Self-mortification practices proved directly harmful. Flagellants whipped themselves bloody, creating open wounds susceptible to infection. Some devout individuals wore hair shirts or metal silices that caused skin abrasions and infections. Extreme ascetics sometimes starved themselves to death in pursuit of spiritual purity. Church attendance itself spread disease efficiently. Crowded, poorly ventilated spaces provided perfect conditions for transmitting airborne illnesses. The common communion cup passed from mouth to mouth spread everything from common colds to tuberculosis. Kissing relics, a common devotional practice, transferred germs between worshippers. Social customs around death ironically killed the living. Family members preparing bodies for burial came into direct contact with infectious diseases that had killed the deceased. Gathering for wakes and funerals spread diseases further, sometimes decimating entire families or communities after the death of one infected individual. The practice of burial ad sanctos, as close as possible to church altars or saints' relics, meant that church floors and churchyards became packed with decomposing bodies, contaminating nearby water sources. This practice continued despite periodic outbreaks clearly linked to polluted church water supplies. Perhaps most devastatingly, religious prohibitions against certain medical practitioners, particularly Jewish physicians during times of heightened persecution, deprived communities of their most knowledgeable healers. During the Black Death, many Jewish doctors were executed based on conspiracy theories about poisoning wells, removing one of the few groups with effective quarantine practices and relatively advanced medical knowledge. Does all this make you grateful for modern medicine, sanitation, and safety standards? The average medieval person navigated a world where everyday activities frequently led to injury, illness, or death. The most mundane aspects of daily life, eating, drinking, dressing, working, and praying, all carried significant risks that modern people would find unthinkable. But here's a final question worth pondering. What seemingly innocent aspects of our daily lives might future generations look back on with the same horror with which we view medieval practices?